So I'm here in southeastern Indiana on this chilly spring morning, and we're at Kristen Giesting's parents' house. The farm around here is very beautiful, and we're gonna go out and harvest some spring greens to make a big salad. What do you think we're gonna find today?
Today we're going to be looking for some of my favorite spring greens, things like chickweed, violets, cutleaf toothwort. Those will probably be just a few of the things we'll find in our walk in the woods today.
All right, it's in the 30s. Let's go find it. I'm cold. The United States is a vast and diverse region with many various edible plants. 50 different states, 50 different foraged meals. This is Foraging the 50. Kristen Giesting is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to foraging in the Midwest. I first met her many years ago, and I'm always surprised by her broad awareness of natural spaces. Ooh, look at that. What is that?
This is cutleaf toothwort.
All right.
Yeah, we've got some that are just emerging. Spring came a little late this year. It's a mustard. Its scientific name is Dentaria seniata, although I've heard that the scientific name on that one has changed recently. I don't know.
There's synonyms, right?
Yes. So it is a brassica, so it is related distantly to things like cabbage and Brussels sprouts. It's in the mustard family, and mustard family plants have flowers that have 4 petals. That's one of their distinguishing characteristics. It's a little hard to see on these plants today. We have kind of a cloudy day and the flowers are a little bit closed up. But if you come across a plant in the woods and it looks, it has these little serrated toothed leaves and 4 petals, you might be looking at a cutleaf toothwort.
Also, it is a spring ephemeral, so this plant will be gone by...
Probably in the next few weeks. It's been kind of a late spring here. Usually they're a little bit further along. We found some in this patch that are growing pretty well, but you can see behind it there are really some that are quite tiny still. And this time of year, they're usually at their peak and we're starting to see a decline. So this year's a little bit different, but yeah, cutleaf toothwort.
So why is it called a toothwort?
So toothwort, when you look at this plant, you might not think like, why did they name it toothwort? But below, part of the root structure of this plant, and it looks like Clay may be digging one up here, it is a sort of fang-like or tooth-like structure, and it has a very strong flavor, and it's almost reminiscent of horseradish. So that's kind of a neat thing to gather if you're looking for a horseradish flavor. They are small, but they do look a bit like teeth. They are sort of enamel colored. So the Dentaria genus name kind of refers to this tooth-like structure that we find growing below ground. Looks a little bit like a tooth, not exactly, but
it looks like a canine.
I think botanists are creative.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as sustainability is concerned, how sustainable is this plant to forage? Do we want to just take little bits of it?
Right. So toothwort is a long-lived perennial species. So patches of toothwort may be decades old, and generally I think of them as a plant that is a bit slower to reproduce. So we want to be a little bit careful in the harvest of toothwort plants. I don't want to come through and take out this whole patch. I'll come and I'll selectively take some leaves and some flowers from a patch. I'll move on, I'll take some leaves and flowers from another patch, and I try to spread my impact across the woods. And since this is my parents' farm, I know that nobody else is coming here to forage. I can do that with a little bit more intelligence. Since I know that no one else is going to be here, I can know which patches I visited previously, and I can kind of keep an eye on it from year to year and make sure I'm not having a negative impact on the overall population.
Yes, that's always a good plan. So we're going to gather a little bit of this right now for the salad.
Sounds good.
So Kristen, I know that this is your woods, but right there I see a plant that we should definitely talk about.
That one looks like it doesn't belong here.
It doesn't. We should get rid of it. I'm going to sit right over here.
So this is garlic mustard. It's Aliaria petiolata, and it's a plant that we hear a lot about because it's an invasive species and it's taking over our woodlands in a lot of places. Luckily, here at my parents' farm, it's not really taking over the woodlands too much, but now that we found it, it's one that we'll want to pull out because it tends to spread, it's aggressive, and it's what people would consider to be an invasive species. But the great thing about this plant is that it's also quite tasty and delicious. The name like garlic mustard, you can kind of figure what it might taste like. So we can go ahead and pull it out so that it's not going to spread. So we'll take a few of these nice young tender leaves and we will throw them into our salad bowl here.
And I'm just pulling the extra ones around here that I see because this plant does tend to spread in ecosystems and it can actually form total ground cover. And its roots will actually secrete this chemical called sinigrin. And sinigrin kills the plants around it. And it even has negative interactions with soil fungus. So we should, while I'm not like from this area, I still know that it's a terrible plant to have in your ecosystem in some places. And actually in most places.
Yes. I believe that garlic mustard is originally from Europe, is that correct?
Yeah, it's from Eurasia.
Yeah, so it's a Eurasian plant and it probably does well in those ecosystems because it originated there and it can compete with the plants in those ecosystems. But now that it's been introduced here, it's kind of gone a little bit wild and it's spreading in ways that are not beneficial for the ecosystem.
And it could take hundreds of years for the local soil fungus, other plants to adapt to the chemicals that are that this plant secretes and learn how to live next to them in harmony.
And I feel like it's part of my forager's reciprocity to go into these ecosystems. If I see garlic mustard while I'm there, I'll pull it.
Just make sure that you're not throwing it back onto the ground because it will still probably be able to root. All right. What else do you think we're gonna find here?
Oh, here's one of my favorite ones. This is Spring Beauty. It's a really great spring ephemeral. So again, it's similar to toothwort, and then it'll only be around, you know, a short time in the spring. It has these really delicious, kind of crunchy, juicy, succulent leaves. Mm-hmm. And I love putting the whole upper portion of the plant into salads. The leaves are great, and the flowers are a little bit closed up today, but that can all go into our salad bowl.
So, what is this one's scientific name?
This one is Claytonia virginiana.
And this one has a flavor similar to miner's lettuce, I've heard, which is another Claytonia that is from the West Coast.
Right, and it's also related to purslane, which is a sort of a weedy summer garden plant.
Now, just like the toothwort, this one, as soon as the canopy fills in, it's going to go away.
Right, yep, so it's just a short time frame here in the early spring, early to mid-spring, when we can gather a lot of these flowers and greens.
Okay, is there anything else distinguishing characteristics that you want to tell us about how we can look for this plant?
Yeah, so when you're looking for Spring Beauty, this one is a fairly good example. We've got some nice flowers here on this one. We've got 5 petals, and then it has these sort of grass-like leaf blades. They're long, linear leaves with a single vein down the middle.
They sort of look like spears.
Yes, and they have sort of a crunchy, succulent texture, which is a little bit unusual.
Let's taste one. Mmm.
Kind of a sweet flavor.
Mm-hmm. That is pretty good. Yeah. How much more do you want to gather?
However much. I mean, I don't know how big of a salad we're going for. A little cleavers?
Little baby cleavers.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a spring salad.
Yes.
That sounds cool. So one of the things about spring foraging in general across the United States, but especially here this year, is that it's very cold and the temperature can vary widely from spring to spring. Whereas like Kristen here has said that at this time of year, this plant that we're about to look at here would typically be far larger than it is, but the winter has been really drawn out. Mm-hmm. So what is this plant? It's very tiny. I know that it's edible. But what characteristics could you tell people to look for in this plant in a time like this when it's like so hard to forage?
Right, so this is Pernanthes alba. It's also called white lettuce. And I think this is probably a plant that may be a little bit difficult for a beginner to accurately identify, particularly at this stage of growth. So when I'm out in the woods looking for Pernanthes, I'm looking for a small patch or a cluster. And you can see we've got a little cluster of leaves growing here. We've got another little cluster of leaves growing over here. And the leaf shape is highly variable. So you can see some of these leaves are sort of like wedge shaped, and then we've got another leaf here, which incredibly, it is the same species. But you can see that this one is
it's got like little thumbs.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, same species, but highly variable leaf shape. It's also called lion's foot, which I think you can kind of see from this leaf shape. It looks a little bit like a foot of a lion, maybe, if you're being a creative botanist, which I think they probably were when they were naming this one. Another interesting part of this plant is that when you break the leaf, you will get like a little dot of white latex, which is probably kind of hard to see. Mm-hmm. But when you break those leaves, you'll have just a tiny little bit of white exuded.
So that's where the other common name would be white lettuce.
Yes.
And all of the lettuces, the lactucas, they exude a little bit of a milky latex sap stuff.
Yep.
So that's why this one gets called white lettuce.
Yes, and when I was first learning this plant, that was kind of my final test. I thought, this looks like white lettuce. I think it is. Now I'm going to break the leaf and see, yes, it has the white sap. That helps me confirm the identity of this plant. So we can gather a few of the larger leaves here, but I would say this particular patch I would leave to grow a little bit longer just so we get a little bit larger leaf size, but there are a few leaves here that we can put in our bowl here.
Now, is this something that we need to worry about as far as sustainability, or is this like a very common species around here?
It's somewhat common. I think I would be careful, again, not to take the whole patch. Mm-hmm. But I know that in this particular woods, it's fairly common. I think with sustainability and foraging, you need to be aware of your surroundings, your environment, and the context you're working in. If you're in a woods where something is very prolific, and you know it's very prolific in the area where you typically forage, then I think you can feel a little bit more comfortable taking a larger amount. But if you're in a place where you are not seeing a plant being very prolific or doing very well, then you need to be much more cautious about how much you take.
Ooh, there's a cool looking plant.
Yeah, so this is Virginia waterleaf. It's Hydrophyllum virginianum.
And why is it called hydrophyllum? And what's
so
with the
hydrophyllum, hydro meaning water, phylum meaning leaf. And you can see when you take a look at these leaves, they have sort of a speckled water spot appearance. As the plant matures, those speckles and water spots will disappear, but when we're here now in early spring, they're quite prominent, and it's really a pretty little plant. It has sort of a fuzzy, furry texture, but we can gather a little bit of this to put in our salad as well.
All right. And do you like this one?
It's not maybe one of my more preferred plants.
But it is a beautiful addition to a spring salad.
It is a beautiful addition. The flavor and the texture maybe not one of my favorites.
Now what if you cooked it?
I've never tried to cook it.
Oh, you've never tried to cook it? Okay.
No, I've just actually nibbled on it before, but
all right.
We'll see actually how it tastes. Let's try a little piece.
Yeah, let's try. It's like fuzzy, like a cat's tongue or something.
The flavor is good though. I mean, it's like what you want in a salad. You want sort of like a mild flavor profile. You want sort of I would almost say like a bland green is sort of a desirable thing in a salad. You don't want a super strong, bitter, spicy, overpowering flavor in your salad. So this is kind of a nice base, I think.
That is actually a very wonderful flavor.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Is there anything else about like identifying characteristics, like where can we find it? Obviously, we've been in the same environment the whole time. Is this a spring ephemeral?
Virginia waterleaf is not necessarily a spring ephemeral, so it's actually sort of interesting in the fact that some of these leaves will persist throughout the year, and they will actually be lying on the ground even during winter time. You can come out and find some little Virginia waterleaf leaves just kind of laying dormant on the ground. So it will continue to mature, it'll flower, and I've seen Virginia waterleaf later in the year as well. But this is a nice time to pick it because it's sort of in its young, tender growth phase, which when we're foraging, that's something we want to look for in our salad greens. As the season progresses, things tend to become tougher, more fibrous, maybe more bitter depending on the plant you're working with. So when we're looking for salads, I really think spring is like the prime time to get really high quality salad greens from the woods.
So right next to this big pile of horse manure that's giving off a lot of heat, I can feel the warmth on this cold day, we have this luscious green growth.
Yes.
What is this?
This is chickweed, Stellaria media. This is another plant that gets a little bit of a bad rap, and it's sometimes considered an invasive species, originally from Europe as well. But this is probably my favorite salad green, wild or cultivated. It has just a really nice texture, sweet, juicy green. And the reason that we came over to look at this particular patch is because we are in this sort of warmer microclimate next to the horse manure area. So it has additional nutrients and it has additional warmth. So since this spring has been a little late in coming, the chickweed growing in other areas of the farm, they're a little bit behind what we would expect for this time of year. But this particular patch is really kind of lush and green a little bit ahead of time.
But we are not going to eat from this patch.
Right.
This is just simply so that we can see how beautiful it can look and like what it looks like. And it's all wet and rained on. It looks appetizing.
Yes.
It looks like something that would just be amazing to put into a salad. So there's another spot though that we can find this one.
Yes, we can head over to the garden and we'll find more chickweed, not quite as lush and beautiful, but still very tasty, and we'll be able to get some for our salad today.
Okay, so as far as identification characteristics though, what do we want to look out for?
Yes, so it has sort of this long stem, and it has pairs of leaves, so they're oppositely arranged up the stem. And one distinguishing feature of chickweed is that along the stem it will have a single line of hairs. So if you look at it closely, you can kind of see that, although today with the rain it's a little bit challenging to see.
Wow.
And then once this plant flowers, it has 5 petals, but it appears to have 10 petals because each petal is deeply cut down the center. So it's not flowering just yet. We're a little bit early for that this year.
All right, let's go to that other patch that's not next to the horse poop.
Sounds good.
And we'll go and gather the ingredients for the salad. So this little clump of onion-like things here is called?
Allium vineale.
Or however you want to pronounce it. We were just having a discussion about how the Latin names are pronounced. They should be pronounced how you think that they should be pronounced. Either way, this one is an invasive onion that has taken over, and if we pan around here, the whole farm looks to be covered in it. It honestly kind of looks like it could just be grass, but as you mentioned.
Right. Looking through the lawn, it looks like grass, but if you go through and cut it, you will have a definite onion aroma. And it also has a hollow stem, whereas grass is just a flat blade. So that's one way to kind of tell the difference.
Now, I think that while this thing is not present by me, like this would be an excellent addition to have for any forager who is afraid of taking ramps because of the sustainability issues.
Yes.
So this thing is so prolific that you can get that onion taste and then not feel bad about it at all.
Right.
Because this is an invasive species, correct?
Yes, yes, absolutely. We have tons of this plant all over the place. It's a plant, you were asking me earlier about sustainability of harvest. This is a plant where I would say you really can take as much as you want because there's tons of it. It spreads and reproduces very quickly and very easily. So.
Yes. Do you eat it often, or is this something that you kind of get overwhelmed with and you...
Right. It's not one that I eat extremely often. Part of that may be because it's sort of in its prime again in the springtime. So the duration of availability is fairly short. And also as this plant grows, these leaves tend to become a little bit tougher. But if you mince them finely, think of like how you would use chives. Finely minced, they can be a really nice addition to something like a salad dressing, or to be thrown into like a soup or a stew. And if we pull up a clump as well, we can see, maybe I'll be able to pull this out, maybe I won't. Sometimes it's helpful to take a digging stick or a trowel with you if you want to dig up onion bulbs. But you can see that some of these have little bulbs on the bottom. You can use these like you would an onion, but again, they may be a little bit more fibrous. So again, like finely mincing is the way to go on this.
Another thing that I have noticed in the past when I've picked these is you want to be careful that you're not also putting grass into your food.
Yes.
So if you collect them and you're
Right.
in the grass, actually taking a second to look at the clump and make sure, okay, these are all just onions and not grass.
Right, absolutely. And there is another species that we have called Star of Bethlehem, which could be considered a look-alike species. But Star of Bethlehem will have a white stripe or a white kind of midrib down the center of the leaf stalk. So that's the way that you can differentiate these, that they do not have the white on them.
Also, I would say just the aroma.
Yes, absolutely. That's pretty much the key to identifying onion species. Just give it a good sniff and you will be able to tell.
Yeah. Is that a good amount for us to add to our
That looks
salad?
great. We can throw it in the bowl.
All right. All right, let's go get some chickweed
Okay,
and then make our salad.
sounds good.
This land is home to some of the richest foraging in the country, especially for spring ephemerals. Through the years I've known Kristen, I've had the pleasure of eating some of her wild food dishes, and they never disappoint. She really brings an air of creativity to all of her meals. Kristen has ecological knowledge that extends beyond her ability to feed herself. She can really read a landscape. Okay, Kristen, we're back in the kitchen now, and we're gonna make this salad. Show us what you got for us.
All right, so we've got our bowl of greens here. Looks delicious, so green and fresh looking. And then we've got the garlic, the field garlic, on this cutting board here. And like I said before, this one has a tendency to get a little bit tough and fibrous as it matures. So what I'm gonna do is mince it finely, which will help us avoid any unpleasant textures.
I see we also have some American hazelnuts.
Yes. American hazelnuts that I planted in my parents' yard. I sort of rescued some from a hillside where I knew that they probably would not be allowed to grow. They were probably going to be sprayed. They were next to a farm field, so I transplanted them, and I've been getting some hazelnuts in the last couple of years. And then I cracked some and toasted them for a topping for our salad. So I will just put a little bit of this field garlic into the salad for a nice oniony, garlicky kick. So I'm going to be making a salad dressing, and I have a couple of wild ingredients here. So the first one, this is my last little bit of precious hickory nut oil, which Sam Thayer pressed.
Okay,
I collected the nuts, and I had some friends who went up to Wisconsin visiting Sam, and they pressed the nuts and brought them back in the form of delicious hickory oil for me.
That is amazing.
So yes, specifically the bitter nut hickory. There was a tree just down the street from where I work, so I gathered some last fall. I'll put a little bit of this hickory oil into a jar.
Wow, that's a lot.
Well, we're gonna make a whole jar of salad dressing, so maybe we'll have leftovers.
All right.
And then this is maple syrup.
Okay, maple syrup.
Yes, I've got maple syrup here. And the woods we were just in, we have some red maple trees, which my parents tap every year and make maple syrup from. It has a little bit lower sugar content than the sugar maple, but still you can get really incredible maple syrup from red maple. You can even tap things like silver maple and box elder trees. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of maple syrup to our salad dressing. I like sweet salad dressings, so I think that'll go nicely with the hazelnuts as well. So we'll just do a little bit of maple in there. And then this is something I experimented with last year, is making a maple vinegar. So I used the sap, and I followed Alan Burgo's recipe on his Forager Chef blog. So I made a maple vinegar.
So this is pure maple sap turned into vinegar then?
There were some additional things added, and I would have to reference the recipe. I can't remember exactly, but yes, the base starting was the maple sap, and it was boiled down just a little bit. So I'll add some of the vinegar. It doesn't have quite as much of a kick as something like an apple cider vinegar, so I might want to add maybe a little bit more of the maple vinegar. And then I'll finish it with just a little bit of salt. And then put it in this jar, and we'll shake it up. And then let's have a taste. I always like to taste the dressing when I'm making it to make sure that the oil and acid are balanced. That to me tastes good. It's a little bit acidic just to have it straight, but I think once it's on the salad, that'll be just right. And the sweetness from the maple is coming through as well. What do you think?
That sweetness does
Okay,
come
good.
through. It is very delicious.
Good. All right. So we'll just go ahead and pour some of this over our salad. And then to finish, I have crushed up some of these wild hazelnuts and I toasted them lightly on the stovetop, and we can have that as our garnish. So most of the ingredients in this salad are wild ingredients, which is something that I really enjoy doing every springtime.
Making a wild salad.
Yep.
Aren't all of the ingredients wild?
I guess there may be a few ingredients in the maple vinegar. I think I added like vodka or something. That was like what
okay.
It was on. I would have to look up the recipe and see what.
All right.
There may be a few in there that weren't wild, but I can't remember the specific recipe I used.
But
yeah, we've got hickory oil and maple and salt. I mean, sort of wild, maybe.
Yeah. I'm very impressed with the amount of wild ingredients in this salad.
Yes.
I mean, most of the time
right.
you have wild foods and it's like a meal might be like 40% wild or 50%,
right.
but this is like almost 100% wild.
Yes, very close to 100%, probably 99% wild, I would say, ingredients in this salad.
Well, I'm interested in actually trying it right
Absolutely.
now.
We can grab some bowls.
Yeah, let's grab some bowls.
Okay. So now we have bowls, and we can give our salad just a gentle toss to incorporate the dressing. You can see some of those spring beauty flowers too are kind of opening up now that we're in the house.
Oh, wow, they are actually opening up. That's beautiful. And we're about to eat them.
We are. They are delicious and beautiful. Okay, so here's our wild salad.
All right, cheers. Wow, that is very tasty.
I'm definitely picking up on the toothwort, the mustardy toothwort flavor.
You could have this in a restaurant, and nobody would know the wiser that it was all just spring ephemerals.
Right.
This salad was spectacular. I'm going to stop myself from trying to get any more of it. What would you recommend for people who want to get into this and make themselves their own spring salad? What would you recommend?
I think the first thing I would recommend is starting to learn about plant identification. That's where I started. Actually, my initial interest in foraging started when I was in college. I had a plant identification class, and my professor just started to mention things like, oh, this is serviceberry, and Native Americans used to eat serviceberry. And that really captured my interest. And from there, I started reading books and going to classes, attending hikes. I think that's the best way to start learning, is just to start getting out there, especially going with people who are experienced. They can start showing you the plants. Reading books was really invaluable for me. You can see the pictures, you can start to compare what you're seeing in the book to what you're seeing in the field. And then from there, it's just a learning process. Every year I'm learning new plants and more plants, and I feel like even though I've been doing this for 8 years, a lot of times I still feel like I'm a beginner because there's so much more out there that I can learn.
Oh, it's never ending. It is literally never ending. All across the whole United States too. You could go everywhere.
Right.
And
just go to another bioregion and you're starting all over again.
Well, I'm definitely going to come back here and forage with you again sometime. Sounds good?
Sounds great.
All right. We'll see you guys next time on Foraging the 50. Oh, I didn't see you there. I was just having a little joke with the blue spruce behind me. Never mind how weird that is. If you liked today's video, please do us a favor and like and subscribe and hit that notification bell on the bottom. And if you're really feeling like helping us out, please send this content to a friend. Thank you so much for watching. You have a great day and keep foraging. Yeah!